Violette1st, Bill's Pizza Terrorism. Introduction. Hello there, welcome to another Violette1st video. This is all about Bill blowing up an entire town over a single pepperoni. Enjoy. Plot. It is a peaceful morning in Mount Airy, Maryland. Violette is cooking breakfast for William and Bill. A few seconds later William walks downstairs for breakfast. 5 minutes later Violette and William eat some fruit parfait. A few seconds later an 849-pound Bill walks into the kitchen. A few seconds later Bill asks for food. 3 seconds later Violette points to a bowl of fruit parfait. A few seconds later Bill says he wants actual food. A few seconds later Violette hands Bill some parfait. 2 seconds later a china bowl explodes on the floor. Violette then punches Bill's jaw. 2 seconds later Bill says he wants to eat pizza. Violette then says they can go to a pizza shop for lunch. Bill then starts twerking. A few seconds later Violette asks Bill what he wants for breakfast. Bill proudly asks for an entire deep-fried ham. Violette tells Bill to bleep off. 1 minute later Bill watches TV on his laptop since he blew up the living room TV over a measly pickle. A few minutes later Violette and William join Bill. 2 hours later Violette and the boys get ready for the day. 20 minutes later Violette and the boys speed off to a pizza shop. 5 minutes later Violette and William each ordered a single slice. A few seconds later Bill asks for a pizza with 38 pepperoni pieces. A few seconds later a cashier says the max amount of pepperoni is only 37 slices per pizza. A few seconds later Violette and William pull the fire alarm. Then they run for their lives. 1 minute later Violette gets barked at for pulling the fire alarm as a prank. Violette then tells the manager to wait. 3 seconds later massive crashes can be heard from inside the shop. A few seconds later the building starts to shake violently. A few minutes later the building starts to collapse. A few seconds later Violette and William get into the SUV and lock the doors and windows. 3 seconds later Bill tries getting into the SUV. 10 minutes later Violette and William finish locking up the house. 2 hours later an evacuation siren goes off throughout Mount Airy. A few seconds later Violette turns the news on, only to see a headline about Bill. Violette then sees explosives in the headline. 1 minute later Violette opens the doors to Bill's explosive shed. Violette then sees every explosive item is missing. A few seconds later Violette remembers that about 2,000 explosives were in the shed. A few seconds later Violette and William start frantically packing their lives into Violette's SUV. 40 minutes later Violette and William drive off, leaving their past behind them. A few seconds later they get into a massive city-wide gridlock of vehicles trying to flee Mount Airy. A few seconds later William sees his father is on the outskirts of Mount Airy. 1 hour later Violette and William check into a hotel that is half a mile from their house. A few minutes later they finish bringing their lives into the hotel. A few minutes later Violette turns on the news. A few seconds later Violette hears that Mount Airy is completely deserted. A few seconds later a house explodes on the TV. Violette and William then brace for impact. A few seconds later hundreds of explosions can be heard. An hour later Bill walks into Violette's hotel room, while looking like magma. A few minutes later Bill dies from his burns. Then Violette sees that her hometown is a wasteland. End of story.